Ruth Rogers of London's River Café is without doubt one of the biggest names in the industry. Having created the River Café from a canteen over 38 years ago into one of London's most celebrated restaurants, the River Café continues to be one of London's most thriving spaces. Serving uncomplicated, authentic Italian food, centred around high-quality produce, the River Café is a beautifully sunlit restaurant with a minimalistic design that continues to stand the test of time. Ruth also hosts her podcast, Ruthie's Table 4, where guests discuss their favourite food memories. She's trained some of the biggest names in the industry, such as Jamie Oliver, Theo Randall, and April Bloomfield. Ruth Rogers, it is a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having us.
It's so kind. Really, even to say those words makes me feel incredibly great.
No, it's an honor to be here.
I just saw the film you did for Claridge's, and it's beautifully done, and it's really lovely to be with your team, to be with you in the River Café.
The River Café, I think it's incredible that there's no other restaurant in the world where so many people say the River Café is my favourite restaurant of all time, which I think is incredible because you hear it time and time again. Yeah. What do you think it is about the River Café that makes it so loved by so many?
Thought, why can't we eat the kind of food that we eat in Italy, in London? From the day we opened it, we knew that we wanted to have a restaurant that, of course, made delicious food, the kind of food that we ate and cooked in Italy, that Rose had lived there. My husband was born in Florence. His mother was from Trieste. But we also know that a restaurant is a business, and it's very professional, and you have to be rigorous in terms of, when the curtain goes up at 12:30 or at 6:30, the tables are laid, a grill is lit, the wood oven is hot. So all that needs a rigor plus, but I think you get the best out of people when you have a restaurant with values that you care about.
Yes, and it really certainly does. I must say, the day that I met you here a couple of years ago, you spoke to the table I was at and the guests, and you told your story. And in between telling your story, you were caring for a chef that had a problem with his tooth and was sending him to the dentist. And you had some other family members that arrived and you were ordering food. And I actually walked out of here thinking, River Café I already knew was a spectacular, well-renowned restaurant. But I thought the secret ingredient to the River Café is kindness, because seeing you run it in person and the care you have for the staff, for the customers, it's actually quite unique in anywhere of the world.
I think it used to be that working in a restaurant was tough, and it is tough. It's a performance. You have to, as I said, you have to be ready for people who are coming here. You never know the story of why they're here. They may be here celebrating. They may be here grieving a loss. They may have been about to be employed by someone. They might have also been about to be fired. They might have saved up to come here. Every table has a story. And so I think what we want to do is have a place where that whatever that story is, that they feel better when they leave than when they arrive, that they feel taken care of. Because why do we go to restaurants? We could perfectly eat very well at home. But
it is a lot to maintain that up. You've been now running it for 38 years. And coming from and growing up in the hospitality industry, it's tiring, and each day you have different challenges of staff might need different attention, or customers that could be perhaps more demanding, and you have to continually come back and address that. And I think that's why many people perhaps don't last long in the industry, because it's not just physically tiring, it's emotionally tiring.
Well, I think I have the best job in the world. So I come back from, a day, I always used to say I have a difficult table on table 4, or table 2 or table 10. That'd be quite difficult. And I go, great. How can we change from somebody, empathizing with somebody, whatever they're experiencing, and try and make it better. And as you say, sometimes it's not rational, or it's not fair, or what they're complaining about is actually something that isn't very important. But I suppose it is about listening and challenging. And I do think that now there's a new culture. Our aim is to make it a place where I want to work there. Then I think other people will want to come to work.
Can you take us back to the beginning of when the River Café started? So 38 years ago now.
38 years ago, can you imagine? Now I've come back for our 40th birthday. Already starting to think about it. Going way back, I was born in New York, in what we call upstate New York. about 100 miles north of New York City, in a town which nobody had really heard of until much later than when we lived there, which is Woodstock. And when we moved to Woodstock, a lot of artists lived there. But then when Bob Dylan moved there, it suddenly became quite musical. So it was a kind of town that was creative in its own sense, a bit eccentric. And my father was a doctor, my mother was a librarian.
Wow.
And we all loved to eat. I had a grandmother who was Hungarian and used to come visit with her rolling pin because she didn't trust anything my mother made. And so we grew up in a very simple,
Yes.
thing because, as I said, my mother worked. But it did have a culture of food that we ate seasonally because there were a lot of farms around. And a lot of it was about the table was a place where you gathered to tell stories.
And then, so you moved to London first?
I came to London when I was 19, and it was partly I needed to get away after my first year at college. I also had quite a lot of friends who were coming to universities here, so we all kind of came together in the very heady late 60s. So it was just very, very interesting to be here. I just decided to stay, and I'd always done graphic design. I've made books and done a lot. So
I love how the creative thread in your life has always been such, and that's like it speaks so loudly as well in the River Café, your creativity. It's almost like there's the food part of River Café, but I think a huge part of its personality.
You're absolutely right.
Is the creativity.
And also Rose, because Rose taught art in school before she became chef.
So you both.
She was an art teacher, and I was working in graphic design, and I worked at Penguin Books doing the covers. And so I think when we got together, we had a vision for, we had the food, we had a vision for the way we wanted to treat the people who worked here. And we had, I would say we had the same politics, but we also had a vision for the way we wanted things to look.
How did you and Rose first meet?
Rose went to high school, we would call high school in America. She did her A-levels with my husband, Richard. So they knew each other first. And then when we moved to Paris, because he was an architect and he did the Pompidou Center, we moved to Paris and she moved to Italy with her family.
Okay.
When I came back from Paris and this became a possibility, she was my first call.
You came to London and you met your husband,
yeah.
Richard.
Yes, and then that was that. I mean, it was just quite young. I was 20 and...
It also seemed like a great creative marriage. So two creatives together.
Yeah, we were, an architect at the time, a graphic designer. He was passionate about food. And interestingly, his mother was born in Trieste. And she came to London during the war. And she wanted to continue eating the way that, she'd grown up eating. But she really had the great principles of what Italian food should be. And she actually had separately, before I knew her, taught Rose. She didn't give classes, but everybody who came to her house learned how to make a risotto, learned how to make sorbets of just the fruit and the sugar, learned how to make the perfect tomato sauce. And so when Rose and I got together, she taught both of us, and we took a lot of her principles and used them as a basis for our cooking, which we still stick to.
How did you at that point develop, it was obviously incredible passion that was either taught through your mother-in-law, or just the love of food that came stronger at that point. You go, actually, I'm going to start something.
Yeah. Well, I think, going back to Paris. So we moved to Paris. We had an apartment right above the market. Richard's partner on the Pompidou Center was the architect Renzo Piano, who came from Genoa, and lunchtime was lunchtime. There was no such thing as a working lunch. And we would just come home for lunch every day. And so there were trips to the market before to see what was there, sometimes on the way home, sometimes the day before. That whole idea of the market being, you go to the market without a recipe in your head, which we still always adhere to, but go there and see what's there and then bake, the recipe. So I think the culture of food was hugely important to Richard and to myself. And so I started really seriously looking at the way the French cook. I actually had some lessons. I went to Simone Beck, who wrote the Mastering of the Art of French Cooking with Julia Child. And I remember going to her house and cooking with her. But in no way did I think, obviously sometimes I would think, this would be nice to do as a career. But I think it was just really absorbing ourselves in the culture of food, not the fashion of food, but that you could get into a taxi driver with a sea bass and the taxi driver would tell you how to make it,
Wow.
When we came back from Paris in 1978, Richard really said that he did not want to move into another office. in London in an office building in the city. And we found this space here after looking for quite a few years. It's on the river. It was kind of the back of beyond. The first thing they did was to knock down the warehouse that was blocking the view of the river. They put in a green space. They put a roof on top of that building for their own studio. And very slowly, there was a culture of various. There was a designer. There were other architects. There were graphic designers. There were people who did interiors. There were picture framers here. They needed a place to eat. So we started talking about it. And I said, Richard, we put out the word that we wanted someone to come here and do that. And we put out the word and we got applications. And I just remember so well saying to him, the only thing worse than not having a place to eat would be to have a mediocre one. Maybe I'll do it. And with those words, the germ of an idea happened. First call I made was to Rose. And Rose had actually, a few years, she had a lighting company, but she'd also discovered how much she loved to cook. That's what she wanted to do. So she and I met, and I said, should we go look at this tiny little space together? And we came here and we just said, let's do it.
When it started, what space was it exactly?
I can show you. This is almost my favorite. This is our 30th birthday book. The page that I almost love most in this book shows you how we grew. And so in 1987, we had 9 tables, and you entered right into the kitchen. And I would make sandwiches, and Rose would do a pasta and a very short menu. And then the next day, Rose would do the sandwiches, and I would do that. So it was really the two of us with someone to wash up, but it was just 3 of us. We were only allowed to open at lunchtime and to the people who worked in the warehouses. It gave us the time to grow, to understand what it meant to do a restaurant.
Yes, if you've gone from here to there in a minute.
It always, even now when people say I'm going to open a restaurant, I always want to say keep it small and sales.
What did you find quite challenging in the beginning of setting up a restaurant?
Well, first of all, challenging was that nobody knew we were there. We always say our competition when we first started was not other restaurants, but it was a girl who sold sandwiches on her bicycle, So it was very, very simple. And a restaurant is a business,
Yes.
So you learn about waste, you learn about margins, you learn about, I remember one of Richard's accountants said, okay, Ruthie, this is how it works. If you have an espresso, you pay for the espresso.
Yeah.
And obviously it's an exaggeration, but
someone's paying for it.
You need that rigor at the beginning to make sure, because so many restaurants close very early because you don't really are aware of how much financial responsibility you have to the people who work there, to the people who eat there. So I think that taught us. It taught us also about timing, and it taught us about, how you manage people and how you treat customers, although that was pretty intuitive, I think.
In your heart or in ambition at that time, did you ever dream that it could be this size? So you did.
Yes. I mean, people always like to say they opened a staff canteen, and we always knew, not to maybe in size, but that we wanted to be the best Italian restaurant in the world.
Incredible.
Yeah. We were ambitious. Yeah, we were. But we knew it would take a while to get there.
Yes. No, I love that.
So I always say that, in a way, Rose and I grew with the restaurant.
Yes.
But
the dream was always there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. That's why when people say, oh, Ruthie and Rose wanted to open a staff canteen for the Rogers practice, that wasn't really true.
The design of the open kitchen is obviously a very intentional part of, the personality of River Café. Why did you want to have an open kitchen?
Well, I think both Rose and I had open kitchens at home. We loved the idea of basically of us being accessible to people who were eating there, for us to see them and them to see us. It also means that you can't shout.
You have wonderful.
You have an enforced behavior of manners being in an open kitchen, because you have somebody paying quite a lot of money 4 feet away from you.
And it is also, I guess, seeing the joy of people eating your food as well.
Yeah, or the joy and the disappointment. I've seen people, being handed a spoon and them going, no, and you go, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? And then you go and taste it and it's a bit salty. So it's a dual thing.
If you were to give a staff briefing for service for the staff before a River Café dinner service, what would you say to the staff? What are the core principles?
We do have a menu meeting if you're the head chef, because first of all, we have to read them the menu, because the menu at dinner won't be the same as a menu that was at lunch or it could have been the night before. So the chef will go through, having written the menu, why? You know, why is there a risotto made of red wine and pumpkin? Well, you know, they'll go through that. So that a chef and a waiter can answer any question. Great. Because they've also helped participate in doing some of the prep. But they'll never say, oh, I don't know, I'll get somebody who can answer that question. They will do that with the wine. But I think with the food, we really want everybody to be able to explain what it's in a salsa verde, because perhaps they help make it. So we do that. And then I try to listen. You know, I say, how are you all doing? You know, what's it been like? Yesterday it was so crowded, or it was really quiet. Sometimes a quiet service is harder to deal with than a very busy one. Sometimes I just repeat, always look at the table. You know, when you're walking, don't look straight ahead, look down, and also look at a person's eyes. You know, try and see if they need something, because there's nothing worse than having a waiter walk past you and all you want is some more salt, or you want some glass of water, and you can't get a waiter. So I say, try and look at the person's face. I have a friend who was sitting in Venice with their children, and one of the daughters, who was about 10, turned to her father and said, blue. And then the son later said, frown. And I said, what are they doing? And he said, we've taught them to know the color of a waiter's eyes. You know, they have eye contact with the waiter. And I think eye contact is crucial in a restaurant. You also have to know if a person wants to be left alone or if a person wants to be talked to because they're by themselves or they have questions. Also, try as much as possible. I say, you say yes, and I'll be the one to say no. So, you know, can we do this? Yes, I'm sure we can. Let me find out. Rather than saying, oh, no, we can't do that. How you make somebody feel.
I love, in many ways, the colour at the River Café. And with that, the staff uniforms all being a different colour, the shirts, every single one. It's great personality as well.
We tell everyone, it's in the handbook, is that they have to wear a solid colour. So whether it's a dress in the summer or a shirt in the evening, that they wear preferably a bright color. Sometimes they come in hues of, you know, pale blue or pale green, but a solid color shirt, proper trousers, and shoes that we want to see, you know, and then everybody wears a white apron. And so you can recognize the waiter, as you say, through the colors and the
it's lovely.
They wear. And they really take pride in it. Sometimes it's like funny because you'll come in and everybody's wearing green or shades of
on that day.
And, you know, did you all call each other before, you know, and decide what to wear?
Also, the hot pink fire oven is beautiful. It's so iconic, isn't it? I remember coming here years ago and closing the bathroom door going, that was a hot pink bathroom door.
Yeah, we love color. Yeah, my husband loved color. And so I think we tried when the wood oven, when we first did it, I think it was white for a time. Then we tried orange, and then when we hit on the pink, we decided to keep it pink.
And also, I think the design here is quite disarming. It's always been quite modern and minimalist, but it's amazing how it's still one of the most modern designs in London of a restaurant.
I think also it's a democratic restaurant. You know, it's seating. People come and say, "Where's the best table? I want the best seat." We go, well, Lucy and Freud used to like that table, and then, you know, Jake Gyllenhaal always goes down there, and, you know, so there is no best table. People can sort of sit where they like. Some people love to be near the kitchen and wood oven. Some people want to be more central. Some people always want a window table. You know, so we try and make a space which has a kind of democracy to it.
How would you describe the food at the River Café?
Well, I would say it is pretty classic Italian food. The classic Italian principles, which are the sauces are made mostly of herbs, that the fish is either grilled or roasted. We always have to have a few ingredients on the plate, but those ingredients have to really stand up for themselves. I always say that one of my first memories of eating Italian food was a piece of bread grilled and then rubbed with a very tiny bit of garlic very lightly, and the new extra virgin olive oil on it. So but in that case, the bread had to be grilled really well. The olive oil had to be very peppery. And I think that kind of meant something to me. There's no masking it. So I think the seasonality, that we don't fly anything in, it's all local, as in Italy. The regionality of Italy, a lot of our knowledge came from our wine list. So when we started saying we're only going to have Italian wine, we always said we were going to have Italian wine, we started visiting wineries and wine producers in Tuscany and Piemonte and Sicily and, near Naples. And by going to those wine producers, we really discovered much more the regionality of Italian food. And so I think that education, that sense of a region, became very important to us.
Yes. And you're famous here for the beautiful simplicity of the food. Some of the ingredients, like the chocolate nemesis cake, I mean, it has 3-4 ingredients. It's incredibly iconic. What do you think makes it so iconic? Is it the way that it's cooked?
It's, eggs and sugar and chocolate and butter, and I think that cake is just, it's an assault on the senses. It's a surprise.
It's so delicious.
And I think that if you've also had, it's consistent with the rest of the food we make. I think all our desserts are, that we try and think of the clarity that you get and the strength you get from having a grilled piece of beef with, salsa verde and fresh bolati beans. That when you come to the desserts, you kind of want the same language.
Your stracciatella ice cream is my favourite.
I like that
well.
too,
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with it. I eat stracciatella everywhere I go, but when I come here, I'm like, that's just some of the nemesis and some of the it's good. It's got a good consistency of crunch and chocolate in it.
Yeah, because we make it a flat piece of chocolate and then we
crunch it in.
Yeah. I think that all the food at the River Café, it's another kind of fussy simplicity. It's not like nouvelle cuisine, which is, which was influential to me, but it isn't 4 carrots on a plate with a piece of poached fish. It has a robust and a kind of clarity. Our mother-in-law once said to me, on her deathbed, which is, Ruthie, she had an amazing skit. She said, Ruthie, I want you to put more cream on your face and less herbs on your fish. And in a way, it's very good advice, When we do the menu, sometimes I write a menu and I tell them, write a menu and then go through each dish and maybe take one thing off. So if you were doing spinach and you were doing potatoes and you were doing fish, maybe take away the potatoes. Or maybe just think about one less thing on the plate. But that's not to have an empty plate but it's just so that you can have the clarity of the taste.
Because the menu changes every day, every single day, which is quite incredible.
Twice a day.
Twice a day.
And the chefs come in and write the lunch menu, and then the chefs come in at 3 in the afternoon and do the dinner menu. Yeah. And it's rather domestic. They'll see what's in the fridge, what's been ordered, they'll see what's left over, they'll see people who are working. You might think, oh, maybe this is not the team to do something,
interesting.
spinach. And also I think, as Chef Sean Owen will say, that she's on her bicycle riding here and she'll think, what would I like to eat tonight?
Really?
And how am I feeling? Yeah.
Is there anything that has to be on the menu every day, do you say?
Well, the nemesis on the menu every day. I think there'd be a revolt if it was a nemesis. And I think we've probably had squid with rocket and chili on since 1987. There's rarely a day, except we can't get the squid. And other than that, we have 3 fish, 1 in the wood oven, 1 on the grill, and 1 roasted, and 3 meat, 1 on the wood oven, 1 on the grill, and 1 roasted. And then we have kind of 4 pastas, and then the starters, we have 3 of the antipasti. And so when you come and you kind of move around, you don't think, I don't think we ever think about ideas, it's a process. You don't come in and say, I know, today we'll have, sea bass with blood oranges or something, you'd say, what's in season now? Well, the chef yesterday did sea bass with, chicoria and perhaps, bean and, or chickpeas. Maybe today I won't do chickpeas, I'll do something else. So it's a language. We do progress, we do something that is different, but it's really a progression rather than just an idea.
To have the confidence in the team that you have to write the menu every day. So I guess a part of growing is delegating certain things, which you do. Was it that you'd had those staff on for a certain amount of time? They're like, okay, they know me, they know what I would want, they guess it.
Well, they know what the River Café is and what the people, how we've grown. Yeah, I think it's trust. Sean and Joseph, they've been each of them 25 years, but they don't have to be there that long. It's not a time thing. It's their responsibility. They've been part of they worked with Rose. They've been here, in the partnership by ever since. It's also being the head chef in the River Café is not just being able to do a great menu. It's managing a team of people. If someone comes in and is unhappy, or if someone comes in and wants to go home, or somebody as not even just problems once, to do something, and talk about it. So it's how we all work as a team.
Yes. You've trained some of the world's most, chefs that have gone on to be some of the most famous chefs in the world. And we named some of them earlier. I mean, obviously, Jamie Oliver started here as a young chef.
I had a taxi, I had a cab the other day that dropped me off here, and I said, thank you very much. He said, yeah, this is Jamie Oliver's restaurant. And I told Jamie that, and I said, I didn't correct him. I said, yeah, whatever. It's fine with me if they think it's Jamie's restaurant. But he's wonderful. They all are. There are people like Jamie who've gone to the very height of fame. But there are people who've gone to open a restaurant in New Zealand, that their dad had, or people who've started farms, people working on boats. So I think there's so many great people who've been here and have left.
What do you think they learn when they're at the River Café that helps them go on to do these wonderful things?
I hope a lot of them take away with them is, our principles of how we cook, but also the values, the values of how you treat people. But I do really want to stress also how rigorous it is.
Yes.
That this is, it is a really serious. People pay quite a lot of money to come here. They may have, I always say, people might have saved up for a month or maybe a year to come here.
You can see people coming today, arriving for lunch, and you get the sense of, I'm coming to the River Café for lunch.
Really? Well, that's
you can
very
see,
nice.
you can very much feel that, their excitement
yeah.
of coming here. One of the most remarkable things about the River Café is that it has stood the test of time. And coming back to being that rigorous nature behind it, I mean, you're running the machine as well to keep this going for 38 years. It's actually quite rare.
I'm quite lucky that I think also that we have one, that our focus. We have, if this drawing had been now, because this is 2008, but if we'd done this now, we would have Sylvia's, which is a private dining room across the road that can have up to 50 people. So we do events there. And we have a little River Cafe.
I love the River Cafe. What a great name, too.
Somebody said to me, Ruthie, what should we call the River Cafe? And I thought, well, maybe we should just call it the River Cafe, because we kept referring to it as a. And then we do off-site, so like the Tate. We did a wedding this summer in the countryside for 250 people, and then the books and as I said, the podcast. So we're constantly stretching ourselves.
Did you ever think of getting another site? Was there ever a temptation?
Yeah, we look all the time.
Oh, really?
We almost, even last summer, an amazing site came up in the center of London, and we followed the project through until it just became clear that it wasn't for us. But we often think, I always say, it's about ambition and control. You have the ambition to do more, but you also need to control the qualities.
When you walk through a busy River Cafe dinner sitting or lunch sitting, and it's packed, and there's things happening everywhere, where are your eyes focused and what are you looking at?
I think it's a really good question. One of the things I love about the River Cafe is you walk in and you see the room. So I think I do get a sense of the room, and it's kind of is exciting to me, the theatricality of the audience. You can walk in and you can have the same amount of covers that you had the day before, but it's a different energy. It's noisy or it's quieter. People are sometimes walking around because they see people they know. Sometimes it's like a party. There's so many people walking around, greeting each other, standing at the tables. You can't sort of move down the path. I do look down at the table to see if somebody has a pizza in the middle that they haven't touched, and that, pick it up and pass it around. I look at the floor to see if there's a napkin on the floor. I look to see and people's faces. And so sometimes it can take me so long to get from entering the room to, I said, to where the wood oven is, because there's just so many people that I stop and say hello to, people I know, people I don't know.
That is a lovely thing, because I actually spoke to a number of my friends around the world that before this interview, that I knew loved the River Cafe, and some of them I spoke to were from Sydney, and they said so many wonderful things I love about the River Cafe, but I think the loveliest thing was that they said, I don't know Ruth, I've never met her, but she always smiles at me when we walk in. And that means so much to people.
I think it's sort of what you would do in your home. If you walked in and there was somebody there, you always ask them if they want a drink first. You talk, and I think you see them to the door. Those type principles I say to people: just pretend it's your house. Would you want a napkin on the floor? Would you want somebody waiting for another glass of wine? You'd want to offer it to them before they need to do that. So I think there's that attention, and I think I think the people who work here do that.
Yes.
I think we've got great people working here, and so I think they are attentive, they are kind. I always say you can teach a waiter to, carry 4 plates, but you cannot necessarily teach them to like people. It's fine not to like people, but if you're working in a people place, you kind of need to, I think.
What are you a perfectionist about in the kitchen? What is it that you would often look at and think it needs to be done a certain way?
For me, if you're making ravioli, I say to the chef, try and see your hand through the pasta. We try and make it so thin and delicate that when we're making ravioli, unless it's a more rustic ravioli. But generally, we like to see that. I like to see the pizzas where the cheese is melted, but there's not too much so that when you pick it up, it's not falling off. I'm also, I have to say, and then probably as I get older, I am really fussy about cleanliness. I think it's really hard to cook if you don't have order around you. You cook better if you're cooking in a clean environment. I once heard Alice Walters on the phone from Japanese, and she was saying, and somebody heard her say, and you should see how clean the kitchen is. And that almost meant more to me than that if she'd said,
your tomato sauce is delicious.
Of course it wouldn't, because of course it's the quality of what you're eating. But it does matter to me a lot.
I'd love to talk about your podcast, Ruthie's Table for.
Yeah.
How did the idea of it all come?
I went to a restaurant years ago called Roberta's in Brooklyn. I don't know if you've been there. And they had a radio station. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. What if we had a radio station at the River Café when COVID happened and we had to close? There was a real sense of loss of community.
Yes.
That, how are the people that we care so much about? How are they feeling? What are they doing? What are they cooking? So I said, what if we just did a recipe every day? What if we just had somebody reading a recipe every day? And so we thought of that idea. And so that really was the beginning. And then we chose 3 great names, friends of the River Café. One was Michael Caine, who was eating here every Thursday. The other one was Jake Gyllenhaal, who's a friend of mine who's in LA, so we did that on Zoom. And the other one was Wes Anderson, who, and again, I knew, who is a great talker. So I just asked each of them to read a recipe. It was just an incredible kind of discovery that you could get to know somebody through their memories of food.
Yes. I'm continually astounded every time you have a season release of the names that are coming each season.
Yeah.
The political leaders, the world famous actors. A friend and I who love listening to your podcast, every time you release it, we send it to each other. We're like, can you believe this?
Yes. Well, Jimmy Fallon said, if I could get those people on, Tonight Show. But the fact is, I think it's really to do with the idea that if I were to ask Paul McCartney to talk about the Beatles or David Beckham to talk about football, or as I did most recently, Kamala Harris.
Amazing Kamala Harris. Cooking in the kitchen with you. Yeah.
And because I think that, in a way, food just brings memories and energy and intimacy in a way that probably I think music does too.
But I think at the core of it, it also speaks very much to people's love of the River Café and of you, that they are friends of yours and friends of River Café, and to come on and have this incredible lineup of incredible guests every week is actually extraordinary.
Yeah, we are lucky. I'm always quite careful about asking people because we kind of let it be known that I'd like to, but I don't want to ever put somebody on the spot.
I think they're probably all waiting.
Yeah, I've got a few requests.
What have been some of your favourite stories that you've had?
Very few people that I've interviewed grew up entitled, and a lot of them really see their ability, their possibility of eating well, as a measure of their success. So remembering the first time, like Paul McCartney, that he had a really good glass of wine, and he just thought wine was horrible because he'd only had cheap wine. Or Elton John talking about potting peas with his grandmother. My own son, Ruth Rogers, who I interviewed, talking about going to the market in Paris as a 3-year-old with his father and just remembering the way they could never wait to come home to have the chicken. So Richard would kind of pull it out of the bag and they'd start eating on the street. And I think, what Kamala Harris did after she lost the election, how she coped with that.
Really interesting.
Al Gore living in a hotel room, his father was senator, and, getting getting food sent up. So I think, there's no favorite, there's no one story. One of my guests, Matthew Barzin, who talked about his parents being divorced and his father, who'd never gone in the kitchen before, wanted to show them that at weekends he could cook for them. A lot of expression of kind of love that. And Tracy Emin, who came to London and, she was starving, just really, really hungry.
Great human story.
Yes,
Come from food.
Yeah.
It is amazing also, on that celebrity topic of how many celebrities call this home. It is incredible also you introduced Dua Lipa to her now fiance.
Yeah, I did actually. I get credit for that.
A lot of credit. Yeah.
Yeah, Callum is a really great friend of mine, Callum Turner. And during COVID, we had like card games most Sunday nights that we could sort of sneak out. And so I knew him very well.
Did you see sparks flying when they met?
I don't know, but they were sitting really close to each other. And they're getting married.
Well done.
But I also think that I've had people come here after tragedy. There was one family that came in and I thought, wow, if I'd been through what they'd been through in a kind of public exposure type of thing that day, I'm sure that I would just made sandwiches in my kitchen. And I greeted them. I said, are you sure you want to come in? They'd been on television. Yeah.
That's a comfort feeling as well here.
Yeah, and I think people sometimes like being in a public space when they're doing very private things. Sometimes that can be a buffer zone. And I think you take care of people, but you told me that Dua and Callum met here, but I really try to retain the privacy of someone who's here.
Yes, I think they happily tell everyone that story. Ruth Rogers is the matchmaker.
Maybe.
Having worked with many chefs over my life, they all say that your books are their Bible. They say you're the goddess of cooking, firstly.
That's very nice.
Just starting with this book, the River Café book.
That's the first one.
This is one of the greatest.
That is the first one.
It's not only a Bible to many, but it's also a beautiful read.
We wanted to have a cookbook that didn't have food on the cover, which was in 1992 quite a big deal, because we'd been asked to do a book before, and Rose and I would both say, oh, we're chefs, we're cooks, we're not writers.
It does go back to your publishing days though as well, doesn't it? Earlier.
Yeah, that's right,
yeah.
Because I was working in books. But we wanted this to be almost a guide for the cooks who cooked with us in the River Café. So we could say, oh, you want the recipe for ribollita, it's on page 210. And then we realized how important it was to write down and to communicate what we were trying to do in the early years. We wanted to just make something, write it down, and then take it to the table and photograph it. So there was no lighting. We didn't even have lighting. I think we didn't have any styling. So every recipe that has a photograph was really taken 5 minutes after it had been prepared. We tried to just say, here's the recipe, here's the method, here's the photograph, here's the book. And then we got much more lyrical, I think. But the next book was the Yellow Book, which is more to do with bringing the wood oven into your domestic life and how we cooked. And then on the green, we really talked about, what was a lemon, what was a fennel, when it grew, where it was from. And then we really enjoyed this one. Rose and I went to Italy, and we really went to the places, the vineyards, the shops, the towns that we loved, and we wrote about that in this book. So each book is different, but the one that I'm really happy about right now is this book, which is the Lemons book.
I love the color. I love the cover.
Yeah,
so much fun. The name is fun. Squeeze me.
And this one really, Ed Ruscha, who is the greatest, I think, living American artist right now. I knew him as a friend, and I kept saying, when can we do a book? He said, I'll do it in 2 conditions. One is that it's short, and one that has one ingredient. So we decided to do lemon. Ed uses a lot of language in his art. And then I did the recipes with, the chefs in the River Café. Johnny Ive of Apple, who designed the watch, the phone we use, the watch we use, he did the graphic design. Wow. So it's kind of 3 friends. This one has no photographs of food at all.
That's quite extraordinary.
And then we just thought, let the art speak for itself. And the recipes are like captions to the photographs. So there's a lot of white. So I really see this, is it an art book? Is it a poetry book? Is it a recipe book? It's kind of all 3.
Yeah, big creative collaboration.
And then we have a new book coming out in the spring is the podcast book, publishers, so I don't lose all my friends, took 80 of the interviews they thought would be best of the past 4 seasons. So we have artists, we have architects, we have musicians, we have families, we have people discovered cooking through discovery, as we say, having kind of been in a certain place at a certain time. We're going to do a big book for the 40th.
Oh, wow.
To be announced.
There's so much going on.
There's a lot going on, yeah.
So, Ruth, we have the most delicious, famous chocolate nemesis cake from the River Café in front of us. I know we've talked about it, but can you tell us a bit about this cake and what it means to the River Café?
Well, I think, I remember where I was kind of sitting when I think I was looking through an issue of probably Gourmet magazine or Bon Appetit, and I was just so struck by the name Chocolate Nemesis that I think I said, oh, what's this? And it was, I can't remember the original recipe because over 38 years we've adapted it and changed it. But the classic of it, and there are many flourless chocolate cakes, but I think this one is the promise of a really dense chocolate cake, as you said, of 4 ingredients. That is actually, you can eat a meal and you can have a piece of chocolate nemesis and still be okay. It isn't heavy. It is about the chocolate. It's about the technique of really combining the eggs and the sugar to a volume that you just have to be so patient till it really increases in volume 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times. It's almost flooding over the rim of the mixing bowl. And so that is the first thing that kind of gives the lightness to it. I think the other is actually adding the butter to the chocolate. So when you melt chocolate, if you add butter, then it doesn't become a chocolate bar. It becomes a kind of beautiful consistency of sharp, dark chocolate. And then we make a sugar syrup. So you have the combination of the sugar and the eggs being beaten. You have the butter and the chocolate as one ingredient. And then you have a syrup, which you pour in at the end, which gives it, again, a lightness to it. And that really is as simple as that. But I have to say that, for years, people would be calling up saying, I can't make this work. I can't make a chocolate nemesis. And even Julian Barnes, who's just such a great writer, once wrote an essay, Can Anybody Make the Chocolate Nemesis? And he described going into dinner party after dinner party of this kind of chocolate splodge, sort of on the table.
Failed attempts.
It isn't a difficult cake to make. The hint, I would say, is when you pour the cake into the tin, you give it a good like that.
Interesting.
So that's a bit of a shape. And then it's very important because it's baked in bain-marie. And we discovered that actually if you put a tea towel between the pan and the tin, and then you pour the water in, there's something about the spreading of the heat on this tea towel, folded tea towel. But that's in the recipe. I go to restaurants sometimes and there's chocolate nemesis on the menu.
Like, that's my
cake.
Which
is lovely. No, I go, wow, that's fantastic that the cake is and everybody, it always tastes a bit different. Everybody has their interpretation.
Let's have a bite, but I'll just say first, thank you. Ruth, thank you so much. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm so honoured to be here today.
You're a really good interviewer.
No, thank you. And
I've had lots of interviews. You're really great to talk to.
That's very
clearly enjoy what you're
doing.
I do. So it's great.
I really look up to you so much in what you've
achieved. Let's do more together.
I'd love to.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ruthie. Thank you so much. And let's eat.
Okay. I was once told by Martha Stewart, never let anybody film you eating. Yeah, like that.
How does she have a whole career then with that?
Well, we have to find some footage of it. But we were on the Today Show with her, Rose and I both, and she just came up and she said, "Don't put any food in your mouth." So there you go.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's amazing.
Really good.
It's sensational. Like that texture in your mouth is actually just quite. It's just so. It's like very much comforting.
The chocolate.
The dense juice.
Yeah.
It is spectacular.